Games get patches all the time, but it's very rare that people go back and visit them. I seem to be visiting them on a regular basis. It's like we're old pals. But I have to say this episode's really special because these games weren't terrible when they launched. Instead, they were okay, and now they're even better, including some of them that have entirely new modes and additional content. You can save 10% on your eShop credit. I know there's loads of sales and bits and bobs, but maybe you want to pick up one of these. Use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. You get 5% off instantly and 5% back in cashback. Alright, what's been all patched up? Well, let's find out. First up then, we want to look at SIFU. This is on version 1.2.2. Straight off the bat, if we look at when it first came out in our review, performance was generally quite decent. There were a few stutters here and there, but as I say, it was overall quite impressive. It held 30 FPS, it didn't look like you were wearing glasses made out of Vaseline, it was okay. Now on version 1.2.2. Loads of other numbers, they've finally added in the Arena expansion, which is the 4th title update since it came out. This one's absolutely massive, and it adds the Fight Club-like arena modes. These are 45 different arena challenges, and those are spread across 9 different new locations. You don't need to have completed the main game, you can jump across, but I think it's probably wise that you get your base level of skill up before heading into these. They have also added in 28 new cheats as well, if that's your cup of tea, and they're different modifiers and things to change up the gameplay. There's 6 new outfits in here, and performance upgrades. Now, I said performance wasn't bad, but there were certain stages and areas where performance would drop quite substantially. Just a quick look at the performance, it looks to be locked out at 30. I didn't see any big drops, and it's just nice to see free content that adds real, meaningful change to the base game. So if you haven't downloaded it or booted up SIFU in a while, it's a really good time to check it out. Rogue Legacy 2 has just released version 1.2.2, I think, and it's known as their Swansong update. As the title suggests, this is the last one for the game. This is one of the best roguelites on Switch, so much fun, really fast paced, but they've added in 3 new game modes, and it's predominantly designed for those players that have finished everything else, so these are stupidly challenging. The first of those is called True Rogue, which as the title suggests is very much a traditional roguelite version, aka it gives you one single attempt to conquer the kingdom with a random class. So rather than the traditional world, you now start in a random biome, and then with every boss that you beat, you teleport to a new random one, and it gives you the choice of a new contrarian class. Now, interestingly, not every biome has got to be completed, and they've also been made much smaller. It gives it that classic short and sweet feeling, as the developers put it. The next one is Thanatophobia. That was originally the hardest achievement in the first Rogue Legacy game, and now that it's an official game mode, you're given only 15 lives to complete the entire game. If you've played this, I mean, my review, I probably put about 300 lives into it, and once you're out of those 15 lives, your save file is deleted and you're sent weeping. And to make it even harder, you can only play each class once. The final game mode is Thanatophobia, where the developers state that this game is slightly easier than the first, and it mixes up that gameplay that we just spoke about to make it a little more challenging. But to give you a fighting chance, as they put it, they unlock all the fabled weapons in the game. On that note, they actually added in a ton of new fabled weapons, things like the Royal Vikings, loads of tweaks to the different classes, just a ton of free additional content to what I thought was already a brilliant game. So yeah, performance as you'd expect is 60 frames per second. Well, I say as you'd expect, you wouldn't expect that at all, let's be honest. It's 60 frames per second, load times are almost non-existent, and it's just a polished and brilliant experience. So Rogue Legacy 2, I doff my cap to you, good sir. If you want the full patch notes, I'll pop a link to those in the top pinned comment or the description. I thought it'd be quite nice to revisit Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, because obviously we reviewed version 1.0.1, I think, and then in the years subsequent it received quite a few patches. It's now on version 1.0.9, and again, while performance wasn't bad at launch, you're now looking at 60 frames per second. There are lots of tweaks that were made to the overall gameplay. There were quite a few dishes in the game that you could make that were, or ingredients I should say, that were very underutilized. So they added in a load of new dishes so you can cook things with those ingredients. There were some glitches with certain buffs that were relating to the weather patterns in the game. You should have got buffs for certain weather conditions, and they've all been fixed. There were also notably quite a few crashes, but only in very specific situations. They are all fixed. This one really does run well now, and it's one of those that just kind of suits the Switch. So if you're after a slightly unusual rice paddy farming / side-scrolling action game, then yeah, do check out our full review of Sakuna Rice and Ruin. Then we've got No Man's Sky. Now this has seen so many patches. Unfortunately, 4.2.0 and 4.2.2, they did introduce a few crash loops, and that means that for some people your game will crash like a second after you load up. It's not something that I've experienced, I have to say, and I've got a lot of different save files. But we're now on version 4.3.3 or 4.3.0, and from what I can tell from the community, it doesn't seem like those crash loops are actually fixed. As I say, it's a very small minority of people, but that is a serious bug. What I will say though is this version adds in a big expedition, and it's why it's called the Singularity Patch. Now this is still important for Switch users because there's kind of a few jumps, like we're always behind the PS5 and the PC, and there tend to be a few jumps, and this one brings us up at least in line, mostly with a lot of the bug fixes that we saw in other versions. But No Man's Sky is one of those where there's just constantly new bugs popping up. Now, as far as performance goes, 30 frames per second, they did fix a big issue related to bases where you could really drop performance down. Yes, you can still do it. I mean, this is still a, it's a Tegra 1 chipset. You can hurt it if you are really that way inclined, but it's generally quite good and it will hold 30 most of the time. The Singularity Expedition basically has a new mystery for you to solve, focusing on the damaged autophage heads, and you can find those in the harmonic camps. The rewards for if you figure it all out are things like a new jetpack, as well as freighter engine, and I just don't see any sign of them slowing down in terms of updates and new patches and additions. It's, as I say, a bit of a shame that they've introduced this quite big issue on Switch, so developers, if you're watching, a lot of our community are really hoping for a fix to that crash issue. But generally, for most people, it runs well enough and you hopefully won't have that problem. So that's it for this one. In the next episode, we're going to be looking at the massive River City Girls 2 patch that came out, including loads of new content, huge performance increases. So make sure you subscribe if you enjoy this type of video. As I said at the start, save yourself a bit of money on your eShop credit if you want and support the channel using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. All that's left to say is I hope you have a nice evening and a good weekend, and for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!